521 at KPEL, it is Go Acadiana, and joining us today is Chrysta Castañeda. Good to have you with us today. It's so nice to talk to someone who specializes in communications and can talk Twitter.
Good to be here.
Hey, Chrysta, it is so weird that, I'll admit it's the 21st century, but who would have ever thought even 10 years ago we would be discussing a subject like Twitter and tweets? But here we are, and the president-elect is using it like crazy, and nearly 70% of Americans give a big thumbs down to his Twitter habit. Do you think he's got a problem because of this habit?
Well, I think he is using it in ways that aren't going to necessarily advance his agenda once he gets into the presidency. I mean, the people who follow him like it because it gives them a sense of a personal connection with, the president. But in terms of actually reaching the people he wants to influence, it's just not a very good medium.
Yeah. And, Derek and I were discussing that a little earlier. It's the fact that he can bypass the mainstream media to get a point across. And in a way, I applaud him for that. But I've sent emails that were misconstrued. So I can imagine taking something that's only got 140 characters and you saying something that could start a war. And I think that's a possibility.
Well, that's a great point. I don't know about starting a war necessarily, but 140 characters at 3:30 in the morning when it just occurs to you to say something is not the best way to communicate about complicated subjects. And, this does have unintended consequences. It already has.
Yeah, and I understand that Anonymous, the hacking group, has already warned Trump that you will regret the next 4 years. Man.
Ominous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of ominous when you got groups like that. I'm surprised it's taken him this long to even weigh in on that, but it's just unbelievable that some of the comments that Donald Trump has made, and as a matter of fact, Derek has got some numbers coming up in a few minutes, some of the Twitter words that you can search that Donald Trump has used. It just makes me feel like this is just a bad idea. But, in this day and age, let's face it, you've got a 70-year-old man who all of a sudden jumps on this great technology and is making use of it. I know some people in their 50s that don't even know how to turn on a computer.
He is with it on that perspective. Yes, he is using the most current tools to get his message across and doing it in a way no one would have thought was really possible.
Would you give him any advice as to what not to do from this point forward? I mean, on Friday, he becomes the president. So between now and then, it seems like, go ahead and be stupid, but after Friday, you should do what?
Well, look, he's got a communications director. He's got a White House spokesperson. He's got a press secretary. Those people are professionals. They're there for a reason, and the reason is to help him communicate his messages to the right people in the right ways at the right time. And you can undo a really great communication strategy by putting out something like a tweet, in the middle of the night that's not very well considered and actually undermines what you're trying to do more globally. So stop, think, use the best tools you've got, and Twitter's not necessarily, and most likely is not the best tool for most of these situations.
Chrysta Castañeda is our guest, and Derek's got a question for you.
Hello, Chrysta. Thank you for joining us again. One question I have about Twitter, and, we see Trump going on these Twitter tirades often. What do you think is one of the biggest differences between the ways that President Obama uses Twitter versus what Trump up to this point has used it? Are there any comparisons as far as some of the negative responses we've seen?
Well, a couple things come to mind. First of all, using it to spotlight issues, as I think President Obama did, is a little different than using it to call out specific individuals and specific companies, and frankly to disparage in a way that impacts specific individuals and corporations.
Yeah, I think, it's been something that just points out the fact that Donald Trump can be just a bully, and that sort of thing has got to stop. But leading into something else, and Chrysta, if you don't want to go there, just let me know. But they're like 30% of the House Democrats are not going to the inauguration, and my question was, do these people think they'll actually be able to pass legislation that will make it past Donald Trump's veto pin? I don't think they're thinking on their end.
Well, it doesn't it remain to be seen who can pass any bill in the current environment. And we don't really know yet. I don't think we don't have. If there is one, a cohesive view of what Donald Trump intends to do and how he intends to do it. And some of his policies, frankly, run contrary to Republican ideals. So it's going to be a really, really interesting transition.
Yeah, it really will be. And we've often talked about this. When you get elected to office like this, when you wake up the next morning and look at the ceiling and go, oh, my God, what did I get myself into? I don't think Donald Trump is going to have that moment for some time, because it will take him a moment or two to realize it's not the way Donald wants it. Just because he wants it one way, it's not going to happen. I think most people get elected president and they realize there's a certain amount of, give and take. Donald Trump is used to being the boss, and he may regret, I think, running for office. I don't know. Just totally off.
Well, those are great points, and sure, I mean, it all looks good from the outside, but when it's actually your responsibility to run this country, that's a pretty big job.
Yeah, and Chrysta, I've often wondered this, what's going to happen in about 3 months when Donald gets bored? Mike Pence, president of the United States, but what the heck? Never know. Well, Chrysta, thanks for being with us, and I'm sure we'll be talking about tweets again in coming weeks, and we'll be getting back in touch with you.
I'm happy to talk to you.
Thank you, Chrysta. We appreciate it. Chrysta Castañeda from Dallas. She is an expert who specializes in communication. She's also an attorney who specializes in communications, and great to have her on. 528 at KPEL.